All right, so it is now 2:05. Hello, my name is Robert, and I am the chair of this meeting. Thank you all so much for coming today and taking the time out of your busy schedules. As you all know, we're faced with a quite unusual circumstance or set of situation, and I don't think I've ever experienced this myself, and I've been here well over 25 years now. What we're gathered to talk about today is the meeting. The meeting is about the visa and residency status and the changes that are being made by the current government, the current cabinet, but the cabinet before them, and what we can expect, what we're looking at, what we can expect in the coming months and years, and to discuss what we can do realistically as individuals, as a union, and also as foreign residents, because not everyone here today is a union member. And just once more, I may have already said this, but what we can do things for our members, and we can prepare information and make suggestions as an organization to government on its policies and also on the guidelines that are used to execute, it's probably the right word, the laws. But we're limited. So there are certain actions, there are certain things that we may be calling for that actually have a broader appeal. And we'll be looking at other foreign residents in Japan from a wide variety of groupings beyond simply the labor, the workers movement. So I would like to begin the meeting in earnest by asking Simon to take the mic.
Okay. Well, the title of today's meeting is your visa residency status at risk? And I'm going to deal with that and give you my opinion on it and some information about it. But I want to start with a little bit of a background to the events that have been taking place in Japan over the last few months. And I'd like you to look at the graph here, which is, I think it's from Yomiuri originally. And it shows, I'm particularly interested in this question here, number in favor of actively accepting foreign workers. And you can see it starts quite low in the low 40s in 2017, zooms up to a majority just under 60% in 2021, and then zooms down to below 40% this year. And I think we need to explain what's going on here, because it gives us quite a lot of information about what's happening and why it's happening as well. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that the beginning of this story starts just off the graph. And in 2016, an internal committee of the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, which has been in power for most of the time since 1945, actually no, since 1955, I'm wrong there. But in 2016, they realized that because of demographic trends, nothing could be done about the Japanese economy, or not a lot, without the import of foreign labor. And so this actually became the dominant position in the Liberal Democratic Party, though they didn't call it immigration, because that implies that people are going to be there permanently living in Japan. But they introduced a thing called the Specialist Worker Program. And with certain types of job, always there were specialists allowed into Japan. I think a lot of our union members were on specialists in humanities. But this was for blue-collar workers in particular. And even though it was called specialist, in particular, they were looking to recruit people for construction and care workers, and a lot of jobs that they were finding it difficult to get Japanese people to do at this time. And the LDP changed its stance, realizing that they needed to bring foreign workers into the country. But this also scared them, and whether they would be able to manage foreign workers within the workforce. So this was tied as a two-pronged program. It said it is necessary to establish a legal framework to cope with permanent residents who no longer meet the criteria for their legal status. Okay, so what this is about is control. They opened a pathway for larger numbers of workers to become permanent residents and even citizens. And they wanted to exert control over those, the right to take that permanent residence away. So this is a quote from, I think, some ministerial conference in 2022. So it predates the existing legislation. So this has been planned and talked about for quite some time now. Now, then came in June of last year, this amended Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Act was passed through the Diet. And I'm going to come along and talk about a lot of the details of that, because I think that's the event that really affects most people here, probably. Now, first of all, why did the LDP do an about face, and why did they see the need to import foreign workers? I think the first thing was the aging population, that the share of the population aged 65 or older is expected to reach 40% by 2070. I think they can do some things with AI and things like that, but that is difficult to maintain, that kind of age basis of the population. And there's various studies come out with the older population. They're going to need far more care workers. And there was a study recently that showed that by 2040, there would be a shortage of 570,000 care workers alone. And they're one of the categories in this specialized worker section of the visa. And another thing, according to JICA, International Cooperation Agency, Japan may need approximately 6.88 million foreign workers by 2040 to sustain its economic growth. So basically, the LDP saw the need, despite the fact it has a strong nationalist element that support the party, it saw the need to import foreign labour. And that basically hasn't changed. That stance hasn't changed. I'll come on to this in a minute, but this is a quote from Autumn, and it was repeated in articles in the financial press recently as well. It says, "We are looking ahead toward the future of foreigners as 10% of Japanese society. The government needs to reconsider its strategies for accepting foreign workers in order to create a lively society where we coexist with foreigners." So that was from August, and I'm going to argue that basically their position on import of labour hasn't changed, and I don't think it's likely to change in the short term, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, now, point I think probably many here will understand, the Liberal Democratic Party is financed by the large corporations. He who pays the piper calls the tune. And you can see here, I can see my bank is the top donator to the Liberal Democratic Party with some 7 billion yen. But you can see here that these businesses need that labour. The labour shortage is cutting into their profits, and it's in their interest to import that labour. And in October 2025, there was a Nikkei survey, and 98% of corporate CEOs were in favour of employing foreign workers. And I think 97% said that their companies were going to employ more foreign workers next year. So I don't think fundamentally that strategy has changed. But as I said, it's a dual approach of encouraging workers, but attempting to increase control over them. So you've seen all sorts of measures to tighten up regulations, and actually to make life more difficult for layers of foreign workers there under measures of control. And you can see we've seen since 2023 enforced deportation of overstayers. Uh, Actually, probably I should have put this in a different order. We've seen the doubling of deportations between June and August 2025. So it didn't start with Takaichi. I'll come on to her in a moment, but this didn't start with Takaichi. It started with these guys here, and even Abe beforehand, who introduced the special workers visa. Okay, so another thing that they've done that they've already announced, I forget when they announced it, I think it was autumn of last year, was that the government can block visa renewal. The immigration authorities can block visa renewal for anybody who's not paid taxes or national insurance from June 2027. Okay, so make sure if you leave the country and you've got that you pay up all your arrears of taxes, national insurance, things like that, because there's a chance you may not be allowed back in the country. That's people with visas. I'll come on to permanent residence in a moment. But again, there's already been things like the business manager visa, which before I think you only needed something like 1 million yen in capital. Now they've increased that to 30 million you need in capital to be on that visa, and you have to employ at least one Japanese citizen. Things that weren't insisted upon before. So there's a tightening up of conditions, increasing deportations, and a crackdown at the same time as there's an increase in the number of foreign workers. Okay, now I'm going to go on to talk about the amended Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Act. This act that was passed in 2024, and it's the thing probably that should most concern us at the present. Now, things move a little bit slowly in Japan, and they've actually got a timeline for implementation of it. And I'll explain more on this as we go along, but it was passed in 2024. They've just published drafting guidelines, and we have a copy of them. I think we'll probably distribute them to members later on. They're quite simple to understand. From the summer 2026, up until now, they've been taking advice from various lawyers groups and things like this, some groups that represent foreigners. I think we should actually try and get in on that as a stakeholder, since we have a substantial foreign membership. But in the summer of 2026, they opening to the public for public comment on the guidelines. And then in autumn 2026, the guidelines will be finalized. And why guidelines are so important, I'll come along to that question in a minute. But I've actually seen some parts of it may come into effect in June 2027, but in the government advice, the summary, it actually said April 2027. So spring 2027, this law will take effect. So it's not something that, is introduced suddenly and then, well, it was introduced suddenly, but it's not something that takes effect immediately. Now, what are the provisions of the Act? There's four main ones at once. Now, I don't know whether we have any technical interns here, but there's a replacement of the technical intern programs by these Special Worker 1 and Special Worker 2. And the first one is 3 years, like the technical intern training program. But the second one, people may be allowed to bring families. They may they're allowed to change jobs under these new ones after 1 year. So it's not, basically, you're not tied to one employer. So broadly, these are improvements, but not as much as we like. Like the two, you need employers' permission. They have to sign off on you having played a responsible role. This would be after 8 years, because the first visa is 3 years, the second is 5 years. Then you can apply for things like permanent residence. But to get the second one, I believe the employer has to sign off on that. Now, the other thing, which is I'm going to deal with in a minute, is the strict to permanent residency requirements. There are changes to the refugee process, limited about the number of times you can appeal refusal to be granted refugee status. And already that's being used. Well, that hasn't come into force yet, but already they're cracking down and deporting children as well under the people whose parents have applied and not been granted refugee status. But it's been restricted further. And then there's a strange thing called the digital nomad visa, which is introduced. And this is a visa that allows you to work remotely in Japan as an IT worker for 6 months. You're paid by your IT employers at home, but you're allowed to get a taste of Japan and work remotely. I think they're hoping to poach IT workers with that, but it's only 6 months and it's non-renewable. So no possibility, unless you can get work in Japan in those 6 months, of staying any longer. And what alarms me a little bit about that visa, you need private health insurance. And we've seen some of the anti-foreigner parties, the Sanseto in particular, saying foreigners should be forced to have private health insurance. So not the public health insurance system, but private health insurance. And this visa requires you to do that, which I don't think is good. Okay, now I'm going to get to the meat of it. The new grounds for revocation of the visa. That means cancelling of your permanent residence status. It's not a visa, it's a residence status. Now, there are basically 4 main changes here. Intentional non-payment of public taxes, income tax, residence tax, property and public charges, health insurance, pension premiums. So basically, arrears of kokumin nenkin or kokumin kenko hoken could be grounds for losing your permanent residence status. It has to be deliberate, though, and what it means by deliberate, it can't be because you get sick or you become unemployed. So if you have need, you have to be able to pay and not paying. And it looks like you may get the chance to pay before you do. There's a few questions and we don't know how it's going to work out, but the guidelines as they're written, that's what they state. Then the other thing, the second one, is violation of Immigrant Control Act obligations. And some people said I was scaremongering when I told people about this, but the government's summary of the government's guidelines quote that failure to carry a residence card could be a reason. Failure to carry a residence card at all times could be a reason for this. So, and it doesn't seem that there has to be intent with this. It's not clear from what I can see. So it could be you leave your wallet in the other jacket, and it's possible that you could end up losing your permanent residence status over it. Possible. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. I'm going to come to that in a moment. Then they've actually specified more concretely crimes that you could lose your permanent residence status for. First thing is theft-related offences. So there's been a lot of stuff in the news about foreign criminal gangs and things like that. So theft-related cases is there. Dangerous driving causing death or injury. Burglary and similar crimes. And the fourth one is a bit weird. Special lock-picking tool possession. So don't get caught with a lock-picking tool on you, because you lose your permanent residence over that, unless you're a locksmith or something like that. Now, note it says here that only intentional crimes you could lose it for. So negligent crimes are included, but notice dangerous driving isn't a negligent crime, and I guess that drunken driving wouldn't be a negligent crime either. So let's move on. So
Yes.
the procedure for revocation. The first thing is that an official has to make a complaint about you, has to report the issue to the government. So if you are not caught not carrying a residence card, it would presumably be the police authorities would investigation. Or if you hadn't paid your Kokumin Kenko Hoken, the office responsible for that would report you to immigration. So this is discretionary and not mandatory. And what it means is they don't have to report you. And as well, that's one of the reasons why there's these guidelines to give, because it's discretionary. Not everybody is going to be treated the same. It's up to the officer concerned whether they report it. So these are the guidelines that we've talked about, really are for the officers on their implementation. So that's a bit of a problem in my view, because while it's good that they have some leeway, what it means is that the government could actually stiffen up these things by changing the procedure and the guidelines without actually changing the law, without a debate in the Diet or anything like that. So I think there's a danger with it, but it is discretionary, as described now. And the immigration authorities will then conduct an investigation of the facts, and then you have a hearing. I think if you want it, you can have legal representation at a hearing to put your case. And there's also discretion on whether to revoke the status or just to change it from permanent residence status to another status, such as a long-term visa. Okay, and the government have mentioned that there's safeguards here. The first thing is it's case by case judgment. That's what they're arguing. And they also take into account settlement stability consideration. So if you've lived in Japan for 40 years, you're less likely to lose your permanent residence, or if you have family, than if you've just qualified and been found to be cheating on your taxes or whatever. And also they claim, well, there's due process because they give you a hearing and legal representation if you need it. And still, I think you'll be able to appeal decisions on that. And then the other thing is they say there's a path to reinstatement. You can actually fight to get yourself reinstated on the original status. Okay, so what I'm going to deal with now is, after her Deer Park speech in which she accused foreigners of attacking deer in that Nara Deer Park, is Takaichi's government going to make any major changes, or are things going to get substantially worse with her in power? Now, she's competing with Sanseto, the right-wing populist party to the right of the LDP that's more anti-foreigner, for their votes. And that's one of the reasons why she gave that speech about the Deer Park. And it also probably helped her at the present time in the LDP win election as the leader. And she's quite prepared to make populist attacks on foreigners. She's appointed this Onoda Kimi, who probably some of you remember. She's somebody who was born in America with an American father, who took Japanese citizenship. She hid it for a bit after she came from a politician. But she's made a name for herself. For example, in the COVID, she said that the cash handout shouldn't be given to any foreigner. And she made a big deal about that. And she's got, I think, 300,000 followers on what used to be Twitter. X is it called now. She's got 300,000 foreigners, and she's built that up by nationalism and attacks on foreigners and things like that. She's been made responsible as the czar, basically, for control of the representative for controlling the foreigners. Now, having said that, she's been put there. It seems that she's been put there largely to fight the Sanseto, because she's savvy with social media. and the LDP isn't. Sanseto has been a lot more effective in using the internet and social media. So she's been put in there basically to fight the Sanseto and to stop conservative voters drifting to Sanseto. Also, in the coalition agreement, it calls for a cap on number of foreigners. So far, Takaichi has rejected that. She argues that many of the visas, the government can set a limit anyway. And the coalition agreement with Ishin, who wanted a cap put in there, is actually very vague. It says a cap or some fundamental basis for the number of foreigners there. So it's vague. So I think at present the only party that's calling for an actual cap for realistically a cap that they want to be enforced is the 5% in any municipality that the Sanseto are doing. So I don't think there's any chance of anything like that. It cuts against the LDP's core interests too much. But there are going to be battles here over. I think there'll be battles over the guidelines because these guidelines can still change till next summer. So I think there will be pressure from the political right to tighten up the guidelines, to take more severe measures. And there'll be discussion continuing over a cap on the number of foreigners there. Okay, now I want to compare the two parties, really, because neither of them are our friends, in my view. But their policy is a little bit different, and it's important to understand the differences. You've got the Sanseto, which is a right-wing populist party. I think from what I've seen, most of their supporters seem to be middle class. They're not backed by any substantial part of the business establishment. They claim to oppose global elites and large corporations, but you can take that with a pinch of salt since Elon Musk came out in their support. And they've made links with all sorts of dubious organizations that definitely are part of global elites. Okay, but a lot of their propaganda is like blaming foreign workers for the stagnation in real wages. And they have a tendency to stress ethnic purity, and they claim to be like a Japanese version of MAGA or America First. In my view, they're a little bit different, but anyway, they do say a Japanese version. And I think that could actually come back to bite them in the future. Being seen to supporting tariffs against Japanese industry, I think could be used against them quite effectively. Now, the LDP is fundamentally a conservative party. As I was pointing out, it's funded by the large corporations, and it's seeking to portray itself just as tough on bad behavior. And it supports further immigration, but I would say on terms favourable to the employers. They need their labour, but fear that foreign workers might be difficult to control. So they're pushing laws and measures to control, to give the government more of the immigration authorities more power. But they're quite prepared to join in scapegoating foreigners, as both Onoda and Takaichi have in the past. So they're not really our friends, and neither of them put up a substantial argument against the scapegoating of foreign workers. Okay, what further threats do we have? Well, the other thing that probably I haven't had too much time to deal with today is the increase in fees for visas. Just to explain, presently, fees are capped at 10,000 yen. And they're going to remove that cap. So maybe people will be talking about 30 or 40,000 that they'd be paying for a work visa. They're actually increasing the cap to 300,000, but I don't think even the permanent resident status will go up to 100,000, not initially anyway, but that's the cap that they're raising. There's also the general promotion of hatred towards foreigners. I think people can come in and say if they've experienced. I've found more people bumping into me on the train, sometimes clearly deliberately and things like that. But it's difficult because people might be just frustrated. I might be bumping into more people on the trains because I'm annoyed at things. So it's difficult to say with that, but certainly I think it certainly doesn't make it easier for foreign workers to live in the country in this situation. And there's talk about limitations on house apartment purchase. I think it's mainly people buying for rent to rent. My argument on that, well, I don't think people should be buying to rent anyway, whether they're Japanese or foreigners. But that is an issue, and it could be used in a discriminatory way. I don't think it'll be used about. I don't think at present there's any sign it will be used to prevent people from buying houses that they're or accommodation they're going to live in. Uh, okay, so what can we do about it? I think we have to answer uh, these, and like most of the things like crime, foreign crime is down. Crimes are less common amongst foreigners than they are in the population if you exclude immigration offences. But by itself, that's not necessarily going to cut it, because the big fear is that if they open up, then there's going to be a lot more crime in the future. So you get people who will say that may be true now, but it might not be true if we allow mass immigration, things like that. Health bills. Well, I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've carried other material on this. Foreigners are actually supporting the health system because there was an article in the Asahi this week that showed most of them are under 39 years old, most of the foreign residents. So they're not using the health resources. On the payment thing, foreigners on Kokumin Hoken are by and large, they're working because they're on it because they're irregular workers. Most of the Japanese on it, and people like me, are people who have retired or retiring, so they're no longer on the Shakai Hoken, and they're no longer on the Shakai Hoken, and they stay on this until you're 75 when you have a different kind of insurance thing. So most of the Japanese on this scheme are not working, and most of the foreigners are and should be on the Shakai Hoken, the one where your employer pays a contribution. And probably we can say a little bit more about that later. And as for as for the people unpaid medical bills, obviously we don't approve of. We think people should be enrolled on these things. They should pay up if they're not in severe financial problems, and they should pay medical fees. But actually, foreigners are contributing more than they take out right now to the social security system. So most of the things are just not true. Now, what we shouldn't do, and I'm going to raise this strongly, is to take the ostrich approach. And I think there will be a lot of pressure to keep your head down. Don't do anything about it. Don't involve yourself in these things. I've even heard people say things like, "Oh, don't worry, it's only the Chinese that are going to be affected." If you've seen these demonstrations, they have no guidance written on it. So any foreigner saying that is a fool, quite frankly, in my view. And you can't hide yourself from this. It's not going to go away if this isn't answered and this isn't taken up. So we have to do something about it. So what exactly can we do? Now I'm showing our strikers at Kyoto Board of Education there, because when they went on strike, there was some in the foreign community, "No, you shouldn't be doing this now. We're under attack. You make us look bad." And I'd argue it's precisely what we shouldn't be doing. You lose anyway, because one of the main arguments of Sanseto is that the foreigners are undercutting Japanese with the wages. So how do you fight that? Yeah, maybe they are. So we're in favor of unionization of them and fight for wage increases for all workers. Now, what we're talking about doing now, I think Robert raised that as one small trade union like ours on our own, we can't do everything. So what we've decided to do is attempt to convene a meeting of all groups that involve large numbers of foreign residents, including residents associations, labour unions with large foreign memberships, and even things like faith organisations, churches, mosques, religious groups, that we attempt to get them all together uh, to actually do some serious campaigning on this. And that I don't know whether people know, in Tokyo, the unions have like a foreign workers demonstration called the March in March. And if possible, uh, we would like to organize something like that in the Kansai area as well. Now, foreigners, we actually think that foreigners actually have to speak up for themselves and they have to get involved in these campaigns. And we've got a check thing on the questionnaire. Would you like to get involved in activities around this? But if it's just foreigners, that's not going to be enough. So what we would like to do is attempt to involve. Many of us have Japanese families who have Japanese citizenship. We don't have the right to vote, but many of us have children or spouses that do have the right to vote. That we attempt to involve our families and our friends who are Japanese. I think people are less likely to have prejudice if they actually know and are friendly with foreigners. But that we actually use that and try and involve Japanese in the campaigning as well. We're not doing it on our own, but we do think that foreigners have a responsibility to stand up and speak for themselves as well. Because, quite frankly, there's not been much kickback from the opposition parties. Some of them have voted the right way, but there's not been a lot of kickback from them in Parliament. And we need a movement that can stand up against it because there's no stopping it. It's happening in every country. It's an international phenomenon, and foreign workers are the first victims. The other thing, though, we need a drive in coordination with other unions to organise the foreign workers. If foreign workers are going to make up 10% of the population, that's going to be probably even a bigger percentage of the Japanese workforce. So we need to get unions on board to organise the foreign workers. We'll do our part as a union which has a majority of foreign workers, but we need to have a campaign to get all unions to organise. And that's the answer to the argument of the Sanseto who say that foreigners are the reason for stagnation in real wages. It's nonsense, of course, but education only goes so far. In a sense, it's responsibility for the unions to actually fight to improve real wages. And to be honest, some of them haven't done a very good job, quite frankly, of doing that. We're a small, not a particularly strong union, but that's what we need. It's not foreign workers, but the employers that are actually refusing to increase wages. Okay, well, that's all I have to say for now. So we open the floor to questions and things like that. Maybe I went a little bit over my time, didn't I? Sorry about that. But I'm going to keep quiet for a while, listen to questions, and then maybe I'll come in. And if other people want to answer questions as well, if they can, feel free. And right at the end, I'll come back and answer any questions that haven't been answered if I can.
Thank you so much for that. No, I don't think you went over time at all. I think it was just right. Personally, that's just my opinion, though. Thank you, everybody. Please share this information. And I think, as it was evident from the presentation, the worst thing we can do is nothing or to give up hope. So I think there's a lot. It's very unclear where things, where the direction of all this lies. But it may not be as bleak as it appears on the surface. And I think there's room for us to change the whole narrative. Clearly, however, Japan is undergoing massive changes, and it's confronting some massive changes in its demographics and shifts in society. So whether we like it or not, we're involved in that, and whether people like it or not, we're involved in that. So get involved, get organized, and let's see what we can do.